The issue of time has another relevant aspect to it is when and how children acquire social linguistic competence, what do adolescents do, and how do elderly speak, and how is linguistic variation affected by the age. So we're talking about language use changing across the lifespan. It has been demonstrated by researchers that kids learn variation in their community when they're very young, at age 3 or so. And very quickly after that, they learn so-called style shifting. So at age 4 to 6, they are able to switch between speaking like a kid to pretending to speak like a grown-up to speaking in more formal situation and less formal situation. Amazingly, it's quite impressive actually that children that young can switch their styles according to the um, speech situation if they're prompted. So, and they do that without being prompted. They know when to speak um, a certain way by observing and by imitating the grown-ups around them. They also learn so-called linguistic constraints, basically rules when to use different language features around the age of 7. Because everybody is different, we have the question mark after this number, because of course there is a lot of individual variation, but still there is a pattern that if grown-ups use verbs with G dropping, but use words such as something, anything, nothing with the ing without G dropping, children by about age 7 also have a similar pattern. So they follow the patterns of their language community. So it is interesting that there is a difference between different age groups in acquisition of language. It has been demonstrated that if children don't learn certain rules of language use practiced by their community by a certain age, then they won't get them right almost ever. So that magic age is supposedly somewhere just under teens or early teens. So 11, 12, 13, possibly 14 years of age, but we're already pushing it. So this can be observed when, especially it's a very clear example, when members of the same family of different ages move from one location to the other. So let's say a family with children who were 7, 12, and 15 at the time of change, if they move to a different location, it can be observed that the youngest child acquires the language norms of their new place very easily, quickly, and fully. The person who was about 12 at the time of the change might switch between old community norms and new community norms all their life. And then the person who moved at the age of 15 or 16 will preserve their old language norms and will forever struggle with the new language forms and new language norms of the community that they moved to. Um, so, who do children imitate as they grow and as they acquire language and language usage norms? In the beginning, it's parents, of course, but as children grow, their models become their peers much more than their parents. And this is different in cultures where there are very large families and older siblings take care of younger siblings. So it's sometimes called that the older kids raise younger kids in the family. Um, Often, the highest rates of the use of non-standard or novel features is the highest at the young adult age. And it's possible that language change is driven by younger kids thinking that the adolescent peak is the norm. And because those are the people that they try to imitate, they adopt those language features, and they become even more extreme when they themselves become adolescents. So it is a time of identity creation, and that could be possibly the explanation for language innovation. There is an expression, linguistic market or linguistic marketplace, and that is related to going into the workforce and feeling the pressure to standardize the language because people believe that that will help them get ahead, that will give them better jobs, that will help them preserve the jobs that they get. And so if they switch the language that they used to have before going into the workforce, they might they might start using those more standard features even when they're not in a work-related situation. Of course, that is dependent on age, community, workplace, gender, and so the elderly, interestingly, are understudied sociolinguistic group because people look at traditional features and they sometimes or very often they oversee non-traditional, non-standard features in the discourse of elderly subjects of studies. So there are more, partially because we have a more aging population, so there's more interest to them, and those are the main concepts that were covered in Chapter 5. So we're talking about the relationship between um, time and language and society, and about ways to study that relationship. So we are done for this chapter.